What's up, everybody? Welcome to part 2 of the Tom Smith Week here on the Brewtallyspeaking podcast, the official podcast of MetalNexus.net. We did this a couple of days ago, so with me as always is Daniel Terry here for our first two-parter, legitimately.
Yeah, it's like the Empire Strikes Back of the Brewtallyspeaking podcast.
More like comes on your back.
Yeah, something like that. Circle back? No, sorry. I'm just trying to...
They already gave you free things.
It's kind of the... What? No, never. They do have cassette tapes on sale, just saying.
Yeah, this is our first two-parter. This is the second part of it. If you listen to our first part, which we dropped on Sunday, we decided to follow it up with part 2, which Tom and I literally did a couple of days ago as of when you're hearing this. Like we said in the first episode, basically, Tom talks so much about this unreleased record being weird and different and all that kind of stuff, and we didn't want to ruin the surprise of It Comes in Waves being dropped. Some other asshole did that for us, so but it was not us. We kept the secret for about 2.5 months, so if we are known for anything over here at the Brewtallyspeaking podcast, it is keeping good secrets. Although we did tell you guys that we have a Blood Has Been Shed demo.
Yeah, we do, but you're never going to hear it, so haha.
I also have a Full It Dies Today demo that you'll probably never hear.
Yeah, you should send that to me.
I found it this morning, actually, and listened to the whole thing, and I was like, yeah, that's a good song.
Well, speaking of sending things to people, I did just finally package up your Korn record, and we'll be dropping it off at the post office here in just a couple of days.
Cool. I'll send you some pins and maybe some coffee or something. I don't know.
Sounds good. John's withholding like all kinds of great stuff until he gets that Korn record back.
I paid a lot of money for that record.
I believe that you did, and I have kept it in as good a condition as I'm capable of doing. It's just been on the back porch for a couple of months. It's probably fine.
Yeah, no big deal. But no, back to this conversation. Tom and I spent a Saturday morning basically chatting about the new It Comes in Waves EP that the band put out. I think the thing that I really enjoyed about this one was, like I said in the first episode, basically, we don't get the opportunity very often to get someone to come on so quickly after doing a chat with them and to really have a pre and post album dropping reaction from Tom. You can literally hear how nervous he is about the record coming out and how he's like, I don't know if people are going to like this. But hey, that's okay because we made a quote-unquote normal Acacia Strain record. So people don't like it. It's like, yo, fuck off. Who cares? Here's the record you want anyway.
We made a backup record. I love that.
But the thing that kind of is interesting to me and something that we hit on is I was like, yeah, but everyone loved this. So now what the fuck do you do? Like, what if everyone hates the full length?
You can already hear the discography discussion episode where I'm like, that it wasn't quite a full-length album, but that EP they put out showed some real growth, and then now they're just straight up regressing back to what they used to be. I don't understand it. What's your album of the week, John? It's oh, I can already hear it.
Unpleasable metal fans, man.
Absolutely. Don't ever change. Okay?
Yeah.
But don't just put the same thing out forever either.
Slayer.
Yeah.
Actually, that was something I wanted to comment on that we didn't touch on the last episode. Was I love that story that, when I asked him about how, because his dad makes guitars, and I was like, oh, how did you guys get Gary Holt a guitar, and actually give it to him? And I thought that was kind of interesting, it started with Cameo.
Right. That's hilarious.
But no, this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed, Tom taking the time to really talk about this. It seems like when Tom and I get together, apparently he loves telling me information where he's like, I can't tell you everything, but here's these things. Because, when I pointed out, basically, I got a surprise the night before when I tweeted, that when Vincent posted, like, hey, the It Comes in Waves pre-orders are available, or you can buy it on iTunes for $4. And I was like, no, fuck that. I'll spend 4 times that amount and buy it on vinyl. And I was like, now, if someone would please kindly sell me a copy of Wormwood for not $300, my collection will be complete.
Yeah.
And then he wrote back, like, we're doing a 10-year reissue. Like, it'll be out soon. And surprisingly, no one has picked up on that. I figured the PR, in light of some of the bullshit that makes news headlines from tweets, whatever.
Yeah, no
I was surprised
joke.
No one saw that and was like, yo, Wormwood 10-year, and then started the whole speculation train on that. So I feel like maybe we're kind of at the beginning of that whole information that like, yo, Wormwood is turning 10 this year, and they already are planning on doing a vinyl reissue, which is great because then I can get a copy and have my collection be complete. And more importantly, as we kind of hear, I guess we're getting a Wormwood 10-year anniversary tour in some capacity.
Yeah, man. I am surprised that nobody picked up on that, unless we're just entering in like we're entering a decade where nobody cares anymore. But I don't see that.
What does Corey Taylor think?
Right. Well, we'll find out.
Speaking of, shout out to the PRP. We made their most top 25 viewed stories of 2019 with our episode, conveniently enough, with Tom and Vincent from the Acacia Strain.
We did?
Yeah. Didn't I send you that?
Oh, yeah. You did send me that. I'm sorry, dude. I've had some insane like holiday jitters, man. Like my brain's gone completely blank. I've been working like every day throughout the holidays, so my brain's just gone. But yeah, no, I thought that was really interesting that we actually made their top 10, which is
top 25. We were the 25th story.
Sorry. But
if Tool didn't put out a record, we would have basically probably been in the top 12.
Possibly, yeah.
Damn you, Tool.
That stupid Tool. Ugh. That I don't know, man. I started playing that record whenever it first came out, and it's still not over. I just don't understand. You know, I mean, how many discs is this record?
But yeah, so that was cool. It just all kind of serendipitously is coming together that, you know, basically our first episode of 2020 is with Tom of the Acacia Strain. We ended our year basically making a top 25 story with Tom and Vincent. It was funny when I sent him a text with that. I was like, hey, thanks for giving me one of the top stories of the year. And he was like, new metal still sucks.
Yeah, that was pretty awesome, even though it's wrong.
And without further ado, we are going to get into my conversation, the second part of our two-part series with Tom Smith of the Acacia Strain, and we'll talk to you afterwards. So I had the pleasure of talking to Tom Smith, guitarist of the Acacia Strain, again, unbeknownst to you guys, because we haven't released the episode that we did a few months ago at this point, but the band put out a new record. It comes in waves, which is out now via Closed Casket Activities, and I think the internet was a bit shocked that we got a new Acacia Strain record so close to the end of the year. So let's talk about that, because in the episode that we did previously, we were kind of very vague, or you were. I didn't know shit about it, but you were very vague kind of in talking about it. But now that it's been out, we thought it'd be kind of fun to kind of go a little bit more in depth on this now that people have heard it, and it would be a good companion piece to what we did. So, you know, I kind of wanted to actually ask something that I noticed a while ago, but I didn't know what the fuck it meant, which is It Comes in Waves and Our Only Sin Was Giving Them Names have been appearing on your merch designs for a little bit now. And even I had something that said that, and I was like, I don't know what this is from. Like, it's not a lyric I remember. So how long had you actually been planning this, and had anyone really kind of put the correlation between the merch design to, hey, I think this is something new coming out?
So Vincent, it all started with a really, really vague idea from Vincent about 2-ish years ago, 2.5 years ago. We knew we wanted to do something like just Do Me, but we didn't know what we wanted to do. But he had the lyric concept already lined up. He didn't have all the lyrics done, but he had the lyric concept already lined up and knew that he wanted to call it Comes in Waves probably a year and a half ago. So we were like, all right, that's the name of it. And we were just immediately starting to tease it with merch. And I don't think anybody other than one person had ended up actually tweeting at any of us being like, hey, is this a new song? Because I don't know these lyrics. But yeah, people surprisingly didn't catch on to that, as much as I expected them to. You know, I thought it would be more of an obvious thing that it was going to become that, but we didn't get too many people asking about it even.
Well, it's kind of funny because I actually just was reading an article yesterday from Frank Iero of My Chemical Romance, talking about all the subtle clues he had been dropping about the My Chemical Romance reunion. Like, he was like, everyone keeps asking me this question about the reunion, and it's starting to be like a broken clock. And everyone thought he meant to say like a broken record, but he was like, no, like a broken clock. It's right 2 times a day. And then on top of that, when they were talking about their last record, he goes, you guys realize you've been wearing merch that says California 2019 on it for the last 6 years, right?
Oh my God, that's so funny.
So it's one of those that when I started thinking back to my, like, I don't remember this lyric, and I definitely don't recall it being on anything that you guys have put out. I then was like, holy fuck, they pulled a My Chemical Romance, and we just didn't even realize it either. Like, it was, all the clues were kind of right in front of us.
It was like a really fun, like, hiding in plain sight thing for us. Like, one of those things where you'd never notice the most obvious thing. So once, like, the only thing that I was worried about was, like, a couple people got tattoos of It Comes in Waves before it came out. I was like, oh no, this record is weird as fuck. Like, they might be getting a tattoo of a record they're gonna fucking hate. That was like my only worry about that. But yeah, it was really funny the way that it was just hiding right out there, and nobody had really latched onto that idea, or at least they didn't voice that they were latching onto the idea and figuring it out.
Well, it's kind of interesting to me, and when we were talking about this previously, you were talking about how you had been recording this EP basically in your own spare time, kind of self-producing it and so forth. And what's kind of interesting in reading that article or the interview that Vincent did with, I think it was Decibel, was, he was talking about how you guys were doing it like, literally, like, if you were done with load in and sound check and stuff, you guys would be in the green rooms, like, writing stuff, at Airbnbs and like any spare time you had. And then it kind of, again, made me start thinking about the few times I've seen you guys over the last handful of months, or the last year, really, I'll say, and just kind of seeing some of the equipment out. And I didn't even process that even when I would like walk into a room and there's like gear out, and I'm like, that's weird. But it is kind of interesting that you guys created this record in such an interesting environment, or lack thereof, really, because, a lot of people, when you do the traditional, interview cycle for a new album or whatever, you hear a lot of people like, yeah, we just didn't really have a whole lot of time while we were on tour because there's not a whole lot of time to write anything. And sound checks is kind of the only time you're able to work on something because, you're all up there and so on and so forth. And it just kind of, when I read that you guys had, like, we're recording this literally everywhere and anywhere you had time to do it, it just kind of made me think, was it kind of hard to kind of have it be cohesive since you weren't in a traditional space where it's dedicated to recording and kind of being in the mindset to do it? You're just kind of throwing and going to make this record work and get it out in a tentative time frame.
So for me, all the stuff that I recorded the majority of the like rhythm guitars and all the leads, just because it's a bit more cohesive when you've got like one hand playing, and I wrote a good chunk of like the riff stuff. Anything that like Devin had wrote, I tracked him, but anything that Griffin had wrote, I just tracked his stuff too. So it was like super easy for me to be in the same mindset that I needed to be in, just because I'm so used to like sitting around tracking. Like for me, it was just like, all right, cool, let's just set up, like I'll track. The only thing I would disagree with in Vincent's interview was like the misery aspect of my experience. I was definitely like fucking stressed out, and like I was also like right back in my first semester of college doing that because I'm taking classes as well. So like that tour, I literally did not have like a second of downtime. It was like I was either doing homework or I was making the record. So for me, luckily it wasn't like an issue of cohesiveness. I think because we had the material done, it was easy. Like, because me and Griffin, like he owns a studio. I was working for Putney for years. Like, recording is like second nature to us. So I think it was really easy for us with that. And Devin's done so many records that anytime that we needed to track, like, he was just like, okay, cool, yeah, just like give me a second. So it wasn't an issue as far as like the tracking goes with like cohesiveness. I do think earlier, or at least not we tracked all of it on the Knocked Loose tour, and we had arranged the whole record on our Canadian continent headliner, and for me, that's where the lack of cohesiveness really hit me. Griffin would be like just kind of Griffin arranged the whole thing, so he was the one like taking apart like my songs that I wrote, his songs, Devin's songs, and putting it as one big thing. So that's when I felt the lack of cohesiveness, because he'd be doing it like while I would be driving. So I'm like, I can't hear any of this. But it was like, I say the lack of cohesiveness, not in terms of like, I don't feel like the record is cohesive. It was just like difficult for me to get in the right mindset to figure out the arrangement. So that's just a really long-winded answer. Sorry, excuse me. Really long-winded answer of, as far as recording goes, no, it felt cohesive to me just because it's so second nature. But when it came to writing and arranging it, I was like, I don't know what the hell is going on, but Griffin's got a pretty good idea of how he thinks this should flow. I'm going to just let him take the reins on that, and then it ended up working out really well. Like, we still went back and tweaked it occasionally, but he had a good ear for like figuring out how it should flow, and I just kind of let him take the reins on it because I couldn't get into my own right mindset of that while we were in Canada. If that makes any sense after how long-winded that was.
No, it does, and I think that there's a couple of things, actually, and you're kind of speaking to something I was thinking of in listening to this EP the last couple of days in preparation for this. You know, so the whole thing is, you know, Vincent said in that interview, and I think you kind of had alluded to this too in our chat previously, that basically this isn't really singular songs that make up an album or an EP, but it's really meant to be a singular entity as far as how it sounds. The songs kind of weave in and out of themselves, and you know, I think Vincent said he kind of wanted people to look at it as one song. You listen to it all at once. You don't go like, oh, I'm going to listen to Sin and then I'm going to listen to them and so forth. And it's one of those where it made me wonder in listening to it, especially with some of the interludes and the kind of the spacey kind of sounds kind of going between. How much was Catch 33 by Meshuggah an influence, especially in the fact that each song individually kind of circles right back into the beginning of it, which is something that Catch 33 does that, you know, kind of fucks with people when you like skip tracks, and it's like it comes back to that same riff. And a couple of times in playing It Comes in Waves, I noticed that like my phone would just play the one track over and over again because for some reason I can't figure out how to undo that. But I'd never noticed. I didn't notice until a part came back that I was like, "Oh, that part's cool." And then, like 2.5 minutes later, that part would come back, and I'm like, "I don't think the song was 4.5 minutes." But I realized that each song kind of does that very well in itself, of just being self-contained and being able to be played on a loop where you kind of don't notice. But as a whole, it works really well into flowing into itself, with the last track dovetailing right back into the beginning of the record. And I kind of wanted to know how much attention was paid to that, and how much, you know, with something like Catch 33, because it's really the only record I can think of that has done that and done it well, was an influence.
I want to give a really sick answer and be like, oh yeah, I listened to Meshuggah a million times and then I wrote this. I don't even know if that was intentional. So I'm glad it worked out that way. As far as like each track and then the way they flow into each other, or the way that they come back around within themselves, I think that a lot of that helps because we had just written regular songs because we didn't know what the hell we were doing for so long. Like we knew we wanted to make one large thing, but we had such a strong idea, but not the means to get the idea out for so long, if that makes sense. That we were just kind of writing regular songs, and then when we finally started getting clearer on the vision and more clear on the idea, it was like okay, let's take these full songs and see how we can make them work together in the proper way. So I think if that is occurring, the way that they're like kind of looping back into themselves or looping back into like another part of the record, I think it's because they were all full songs or mostly full songs, and then it went into like this one big piece. But yeah, I don't have like a cool answer for that. It just worked out really well.
Well, it's just something for me that, like I mean, you and I texted, like, at one point I was like, yo, dude, are you using a talk box on this part? Because it almost sounds like it. So, I mean, it's like a lot of times when I listen to these records, and it's sort of a shitty thing for me when people are like, yo, like, you do a music podcast, what are you listening to? And I go, I don't really listen to music much anymore, because I feel the problem when I do is that I look at it kind of objectively to, like, try to find little things in it, like, dude, are you using a talk box? Or, hey, I noticed, like, this kind of keeps coming back. Like, I'm trying to listen to something more as a conversationalist and as a conversational piece, and it's kind of hard to just sit back and listen to it objectively and be like, that was good.
Yeah, I can't do anything but active listening, and it's really difficult for me sometimes because of that, where I'm just like my fiance and I will be driving around, it's like a pop song, and I'm just like, oh my god, did you hear that? That's the same chord progression from whatever song. And she's just
dude,
like,
yeah,
what? I'm like, oh, sorry, like, I'm in nerd brain mode, like, just enjoy this song. And then once I point it out, she's always like, oh, that's pretty funny, but it just didn't occur to her the same way. Fuck, sorry, I can't talk this morning. It just didn't occur to her the same way. So I get what you mean with you're just critically and actively listening the entire time.
I have ruined so many songs for my wife, unfortunately, because like she was listening to. I mean, she listens to a lot of top 40 radio. So like at one point that I don't know what Justin Bieber song it is. I guess points for me that I don't know the song, but there's a point in it. I think it's in like the second verse. There's like a weird like he says something like his like line, and then there's like a slight pause in his vocal delivery, and then you hear like a weird like ah kind of noise, and I'm like, why and it's only in that spot, and I pointed it out to her, and she goes, I can't not hear that now, and I was like, yeah, I don't know why it's there, it really bothers me. It's like it's just a weird production thing that someone did. I was like, I don't know why you would have done that. I just don't know. But then there are times like she was listening to the new Memphis Mayfire when that came out, and the song The Old Me, and I was like, this is something. And I was like, I recognize this melody from something. And then I was like, oh, shit, it's the intro to Diary of Jane by Breaking Benjamin. And she was like, what? And I go, yeah, totally. It's the intro to Breaking Benjamin by Diary of Jane by Breaking Benjamin. Like, even down sort of to Maddie Mullins' like vocal delivery is almost the same as the dude from Breaking Benjamin's like vocal cadence. And then she was like, and then I played it for her, and she goes, oh, yeah, it is. So, like, I do the same thing, like, where I ruin songs, because then they're like, that's all I hear now is that thing that you pointed out.
Yeah, it's such like it's a blessing and a curse to be able to keep all of that music info in your brain.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's something that actually becomes, and I don't think I even asked you this really the last time or in general, but like that has really stunted me from when I try to write stuff, because like I'll get on something cool or like a cool riff or like a good progression, and then somehow either through the repetition of playing it, I'm like, oh god, it sounds like insert whatever song I have heard a million times here, and then I'm like, oh, or even more to the point, when you start learning other people's stuff, it's like, oh, like, I'm a big Atreyu fan, so like I've noticed that the other day I learned how to play one of their newer songs. I was like, oh, they did a slight variation of their like normal chorus chord progression here. And that's why it threw me for a while, that I was like, oh, it's cool, like it sounds different. And I was like, nah, it's the same like 4 chords, just slightly arranged differently. And it becomes one of those things, like, when you kind of start breaking things down and seeing how formulaic it is, I feel like it kind of makes writing a lot harder, because you're like, oh, well, I know that this would work because it works a million times over when this band did it or whatever. But what's interesting to me is, in thinking about this record, like I know you were kind of saying, like, you were champing at the bit the first time we did the interview with you and Vincent about how you wanted to write and wanted to kind of start putting in some of your ideas and so forth after playing with the band for so long. And with this being the first example of what you've been able to do with the band, I know a lot of people, the internet comments, which typically you're not supposed to read those, but I mean, as a journalist, quote unquote, I do. And it seems like a lot of people have been really excited to see the band kind of throw a curveball for everybody. And, I don't know how much of that is attributed to you coming in and kind of changing some things up, the fact that it was a concept or whatever, but how was it kind of writing this record and knowing that it kind of, I don't know if you knew it would be the first thing that came out. We'll touch on that in a little bit, but was it kind of fun to write something that was your first experience being, in the Acacia Strain as far as a recorded process? and it being different? Was it kind of like exciting to do that and showcase something and be like, yo, like I'm the new guy, but like I also have all these new things and we have a lot of cool things we can do? Or were you like, fuck man, if people don't like this, like they're gonna blame me because I'm the only new ingredient at this point?
Okay, so I have a good chunk to speak on that, but before I do that, I want to quickly address the idea of when you're like writing something because of what you're listening to, where you like notice that you're kind of copying a riff by accident, like that you were saying. When I write, I do not listen to outside music, or at least not metal. Like I won't, like if I like during the course of writing that record, I was like, when I would sit down to write, I'd be like, all right, I have time to write this week. I'm not going to listen to metal, like at least for this week and maybe the week before, the week after. And I started doing that after I one day accidentally rewrote You're Never Alone by Hatebreed. I sat down and one day I was like, fuck yeah, I got these riffs, like these are sick, like this is just a cool, like, ass beater hardcore song. And then I played it back and I was like, hold on a second. And then I was like, this sounds too close to a Hatebreed riff. And then I played, I was like, this sounds like something off Perseverance. I was listening to that record and I was like, oh my God, this is literally this fucking song. So, and it was because I was listening to Hatebreed a bunch, like before that. So I was like, okay, I can't listen to metal or hardcore while I'm like in writing mode. But yeah, so after rewriting a song, that's when I said I'm not going to do that anymore. I just wanted to touch on that because I always think that's really funny. But yeah, as far as like my first writing experience with the band and my first release and the way that the public is going to see it, it was both super exciting but also crazy nerve-wracking because this was such like an oddball record. I genuinely wondered if this was going to be like the record that had so much backlash that it was like people stopped going to see us. I was like, oh my God, this could be so hated or it could be so loved. And I was wondering, like the whole time, like leading up to the release and knowing that we had a date, I was just like, oh my God, like what are people going to think of this? And it was when whatever news outlet spoiled it, or whatever it was basically one kid on Twitter who ruined our surprise release. Because we didn't want anybody to be promoting it at all because we wanted such a weird unveiling of it because we wanted it to be understood that it was a weird record. And once the secret release got blown for us and it was like everyone knows we have music coming out, I was like, oh my God, there's an expectation now, like everyone's going to be expecting this kind of record. Now they're getting this fucking weird one. I was like, this could go so bad. Like I was genuinely really nervous. Like, me, my fiance, and my best friend Rick were hanging out, late at night on Christmas. And since it came out like at midnight and going into December 26th, we were just like hanging out and I was like, we need to do something because I can't stop thinking about this record going live because I was so fucking nervous for it. That being said, there's been a crazy positive response to it, and I can't fully compute why people like it so much as opposed to the reactions that they've had to other things. Like, I know that's sick, but I am so surprised at how open-minded our fans have been, and I don't mean that in like a bad way towards our fans, but I mean it in more like this record is fucking weird and it's nothing like what we do. So I'm super grateful how open-minded everybody's been, but I even was kind of like preemptively defensive. Like when I tweeted the link, I realized it the next day that I was like kind of being an asshole because I was like, here's the new record. If you hate it, there's going to be more fucking breakdowns next. Like talk shit that it's not Continent. Like I was ready for people to hate it. When I shouldn't have been, but yeah, it was super exciting to be writing for something that was my first thing with the band, but it was also like a weird mindset to be in because it wasn't necessarily the band that I was in that I was writing for, you know? Like we, I think I spoke to you the last time and like explained like what the difference between writing this one and then writing the second record was, but it was such like a weird experience to be writing for this band that I love, that I joined, and having it be my first contribution, but kind of having to get out of the Acacia Strain mindset to write an Acacia Strain record, if that makes any sense for your question. And the answer, it's a weird answer because it was a weird feeling and a weird scenario, but it was super exciting, and I've had a bunch of people be like, wow, you could hear the new elements that you brought to this band. And it's like, I think that's obvious just because all of us brought new elements. So I'm real excited also for the more traditional record that's coming out to be almost more of the standard. But I wrote a good chunk of It Comes in Waves, so I was just real happy that so much of my writing got used for it. So that was just fun in general, you know. I think I've circled back and forth around that question 6 different ways in that answer, but yeah, it was a weird experience that ended up working out really, really well for us and for me.
Well, I think the interesting thing about it is, you know, and to be completely honest, I kind of had thought that the regular, we'll call it the quote unquote regular Acacia Strain release that's on the horizon soonish. I kind of had thought that was going to be the one that was dropping first, and then you're dropping the weird one afterward, because that's kind of how you made it sound. Was like, as far as, and I don't know how much of this you kind of want to talk about, but I think it kind of speaks to maybe some of the pressures that you felt because there was more time continually being added to this. But so initially when we talked to you, it kind of made it sound like, you know, like the record, this EP should have been released already, and it kind of almost made it sound like there was potential that both records were going to drop in like at the end of this year. And so at that point, it was one of those things where, you know, you guys have been sitting on this EP for a hot minute, and I was under the assumption you were going to drop kind of like the teaspoon of sugar for the teaspoon of potential salt or whatever, that you were going to drop the first record that was more of the Acacia Strain sound. So that way it would kind of appease fans. It was time for the record to come out. And then maybe like a couple of weeks later or a month later, like, oh, okay, here you go. Here's this weird thing that we're not sure of. So that way, if you aren't really digging the EP, that's fine. You got a full length of more of what you expected from us. But the reverse happened. You dropped the EP, and now fans are potentially. I think Vincent made a comment in the his Decibel interview that the next record would be announced soonish. So at that point, like, people now know that there's another full length on the way that is probably going to be more in vein of what people want. Adversely, though, with how positive of a reaction has been to this EP, it's kind of making me wonder, like, if people are gonna, like, when they get what fans probably of the band would assume they were gonna get, if they're kind of gonna be like, well, no, I want more of this thing that just I want more of that.
Dude, yeah, I was just thinking about that. I was talking to Laura about it last night. I was like, oh my god, like, this was such a positive response. Like, now what if people fucking hate the next one? Like, I was just like, what? Like, I feel like mentally I can't win with this. It's the next one does have some elements of It Comes in Waves. It's not like a big flowy concept record. Like, there's clear start and stop songs. Like, it's more of a traditional record in all senses, but there is still some of the It Comes in Waves feel to it. It's, in some ways, it's a polar opposite record from It Comes in Waves, like, just with the atmosphere of it. Like, It Comes in Waves is super dark and, like, depressing while also having moments of beauty, which I feel just kind of like, to be honest, like an asshole talking about our own record as being beauty and art, fucking like a cornball. But that's what people have said to me about it, where it's like this, like, my favorite review that we've gotten for It Comes in Waves is, this is a beautiful, monstrous behemoth of misery or something like that. I was like, cool, that's tight. So there is some of that behemoth of misery in the next record. But we really wanted it to be a contrast from It Comes in Waves. So as much as this one is a darker record, we wanted it to be brighter, even sonically. We were really conscious of making sure that the mix had, as much as it still is like super normal of a mix, there's little things that we did throughout it to make sure that the overall feel of it was like a totally different vibe from It Comes in Waves. But yeah, that was definitely a worry of mine, where it was like, holy shit, what if now this record, like, we have a record done? Like, what if now everybody's going to be pissed that we went back to the quote-unquote normal sound of the band? But I think there's enough of It Comes in Waves feel peppered in throughout it that it's going to work out the way that people want to hear it, where it's like, oh, cool, I've got just enough of It Comes in Waves with traditional Acacia Strain sound. So I personally think it's going to work out really well. I think the record's great. Like, everybody that has heard it on our team loves it. So I'm confident that people will like it. But yeah, for a second I was like, man, if this came out and then we had to go record a new record, I might have wrote more It Comes in Waves style, just because of seeing how positive a response that it's gotten.
So something we had talked about previously was, I just kind of call it the Bring Me the Horizon effect now, like where you're kind of, they're incorporating so much different shit. And I know I said at the time, there was a recent interview with Ollie, because I think they had just dropped a new song where he was like, yeah, I don't ever see us doing a full record ever again. And then coincidentally, here we are, this amount of time later, and they just dropped an EP. I haven't listened to it yet, in full transparency, but with you guys having done a full length and an EP, they're kind of getting dropped somewhat simultaneously. And the issues you had kind of supporting Grey Bloom, it does make me wonder, since you're able to kind of self-produce something yourself with, between you and Griffin being in the band and so forth, if you think it would actually be easier to not do a traditional album cycle and just kind of write a collection of songs, drop them, tour, do it again, tour, and just kind of go that route and not do a traditional album cycle where it's like, okay, here's a full length that we have to write for. And in light of doing two records where you've done an EP and now a full length, it makes me wonder if you would rather do that, especially since you guys can do it yourself with the production career that half of the, or I guess it's not quite half, but half of the band has.
I would definitely love to do that. I like EPs generally, like, when it comes to certain types of bands, like when it's a more straightforward kind of band where it's not generally all concept records, like Acacia Strain. Like, if we were, I don't know, like Neurosis, like, I wouldn't want to hear an EP from them. I would want to hear a record. Or Converge, like, I only want to hear a record from them. If we were a band like that, I would never consider doing that. I would love to just do EPs or like 7 inches and splits with this band, but I don't think we would ever go that route, just because even just based on our track record, like, the songs that are on 7 inches and splits, like, people don't seem to know them as well, and I feel like people don't pay attention to those songs as much because they're not in a collection. Like, it's a weird thing where I feel like there's almost not the care given to the smaller releases, because it's not, like, it almost feels like it's thrown together sometimes. And I say that because there's definitely times where I hear bands put out like 2-3 songs. I'm like, well, you just kind of didn't, these are just throwaways, like they're leftovers, or you didn't have the means at the moment to make a record, but you still needed to put something out. So I think sometimes 7 inches and EPs get a bad rap because it's like it almost feels like a crutch, or like a last resort for some bands. And I just think that's why people don't pay attention to them as much. So our track record shows that, like, whenever we play above, it's like from the above below 7 inch, like, people don't know that song as well, and you could just see it in the energy in the crowd.
Out of curiosity, sorry to cut you off, I just didn't want to lose this train of thought myself, but you talk about that, and it does make me wonder, is it because, I'm trying to think, looking at my Apple Music now, is it because they're not readily available on, like, Apple or Spotify and stuff, and the only way to get it was to actually have it in a physical medium?
I know Above Below at least was on Spotify. I haven't looked in a while, but I know it was available on Spotify. I didn't know
Oh
that it
no, it
wasn't
is.
on
I'm sorry,
Apple
it
Music.
is on there. I just
Oh, okay.
forgot they
Okay, well,
separate
anyway,
them.
there you go. It's harder to find, you know? Like, I think it's just people don't know as much about a 7-inch because there's not as much hype around it. Like, it's not this big unveiling. So I think the songs just become more foreign. Bring Me can do that because they're like, I think they're officially a pop band now, you know? Like, they're never going to go back to writing a breakdown. So I think a band like that could get away with it because they're moving towards the fan base who doesn't care about records as much. But I think a band like us, we're going to stick to the main releases always being records. Like, we've already got an idea for a 7-inch that we want to put out, and potentially a split. And we've got songs written. Like, I mean, none of us ever really stopped writing. Like, as much as we didn't want to be writing after that record or after the 2 records, I think we're all just constantly, like, we're all just riffers. So we've always got ideas. We'll always do stuff like that, but I don't think we'd ever want to rely on that as our main source of getting music to the public, if that makes sense.
No, it totally does. It was kind of an interesting thought, taking something that we had talked about previously and kind of talking about it more in today's thing, music landscape, I guess, as far as being a touring band, being a band that has to rely on album sales and so forth. But we know that doesn't actually correlate to where you make your money. It's touring. So it would seem like if you were able to kind of constantly keep up with because this sounds shitty to say, but I think it is the world we live in now, but it comes in waves as like the hot thing right now because people didn't expect it. People like it, but I guarantee within a month and a half, outside of those that it really resonated with, most casual music fans are going to have moved on to the next thing that they're really stoked on for a week or two, and then it'll just kind of repeat itself. So it just kind of makes me wonder, like, if you in order to kind of keep things fresh and keep the Acacia Strain brand out there, if it makes more sense, especially when touring is the way that a band like yourself will kind of make money, is to kind of do that and keep releasing something every half year or so. And then just kind of be like, yo, like, it might only be 3 songs, but I think we kind of had said this before, maybe it was said in another interview I did, where it's like, yeah, we wrote 12 songs or whatever. We're just giving them to you in small pieces, but know that this is what a record would have been eventually. We just didn't put it all together for you.
Yeah, there will be something similar to that from us soon. So we are kind of doing that. That's the only thing I'll say about that. But
okay,
yeah, I do understand what you're saying, and I think on paper it makes a ton of sense for the idea of keeping the attention span going. Because I mean, especially nowadays, like, music fans' attention, like, there's so much music out there that everyone's attention span it can't even help to be short. Like in the summer, it's when everybody's releasing 50, like, every band has a record out. It's like, oh my God, okay, I've got to spend this day listening to this record, this day listening to this record. Like, there's always going to be you moving on to the next thing quickly, especially with how many just outlets to, like, stream and listen to music there are. But I think for us, like, the records, I think touring and making sure that our tours are cool and with bands that are important to us and to our fans is what keeps us on the horizon for people. And then I think records in general just work better for us. I do know what you're saying, and I get it, and on paper it for sure is the smarter way to do it. I don't know the reason why, but I think with this band, at least, records work out better than the 2 or 3 songs here or there as, like, a long-term attention getter or a long-term, like, fan base hearing a big chunk of things. I don't know the proper way to word it, but I just think records for us work better. I totally wish we could be like a 2-3 song every couple months band, because that would be more fun for me too. But yeah, I think we're just always going to be like a record band as our main thing.
So when Vincent, yourself, and I talked previously, about how Grey Bloom got shot in the ass with the Continent,
Mm-hmm.
10-year anniversary tour.
Yeah.
I tweeted to Vincent yesterday, I think it was, basically just stating, like, because he was like, "Oh, did you know you can buy the record for $4 on iTunes?" And I was like, "Fuck that! I spent 4 times that amount to get a vinyl." And then I was like, "Now, if someone would, kindly sell me Wormwood for like not $300, my collection would be complete on vinyl." And he goes, "Oh,
Yeah.
so we're." Sounds like a 10-year anniversary reissue of that is in the works as far as a vinyl release. So I couldn't help but think as you put out an EP, a full length is on the way, and then apparently now here we are in the midst of another 10-year anniversary record celebration. And I'm like, fuck, man, is the same thing about to happen where it's like, all right, we're going to support this thing. Now we're going to do a 10-year Wormwood thing that kind of shoots that in the ass again, and then try to, after a year and a half of touring in support of that, because that's what, quote unquote, the fans want. That now all of a sudden it's like, cool, so you remember that thing we put out about a year and a half ago? So now we're going to support that again and try to get momentum of that. Is in light of what you guys went through on the Continent Grey Bloom album cycles, we'll call it, are you kind of more aware of really trying to, and this is me speaking not knowing anything, but just kind of in light of that happening previously, are you more aware of not letting that happen and giving time for both of these releases to kind of have their fair shake before you would even maybe do something like that in light of what happened previously?
I can't talk in depth about it, but we have, because of the way that Continent and Grey Bloom, essentially Continent 10-year ruined Grey Bloom. The way that, we talked about that last time, but because of the way that went, we have figured out, we are in the process of
figuring that out,
making it, coming to fruition, but we have an idea that will occur later in the year that will honor both the new stuff and Wormwood as an anniversary in a very, I think, a very cool and unique way. But we are doing everything that we can do to honor that record because it's super important to the band and to our fans, while also honoring the new stuff that we're putting out and making sure that the proper attention is given to the new stuff so that we can move forward with new stuff. So I can't go in depth about it, but yeah, there's an idea that we've got that we're working out the kinks with and literally just getting it solidified with booking agents and all the management side of stuff. But yeah, we've got a pretty cool thing, in my opinion, that honors both old and new for that, so that we don't shoot ourselves in the ass like we did with Grey Bloom.
I just think it was a very unique thing that I don't think fans and I don't think labels and people or the band really even thought of at the time. It was like, oh, this is cool. Fuck, man, we just dropped this record and we're supposed to be supporting that, and now that's kind of just shot all the shit. And then when Vincent, tweeted that, I was like, oh no, I hope people involved that were involved last time, or at least are like, okay, let's not do that.
Yeah,
this time.
Well,
so
even to back it up and make it even more clear how much that sucked for us with Grey Bloom, that record was done for a whole year, and because of a million different things, it got delayed a year, where it should have been out for a whole year before the Continent 10-year, which would have made perfect sense, where it's like, oh, cool, we've had this new record out for a year, we toured on it, people get it, all right, let's do Continent. But yeah, so we didn't intend on it being that way, but now that's the situation we've been put in, where we have to face that again, we were like, okay, we're going to figure out a way to do something that honors Wormwood. I'm not going to say if it's whole record, not going to say how we're going to do it yet, because I obviously can't talk about it, but we're going to figure something out where we honor that and get to still play new stuff and figure it out that way. So yeah, I think that was such a rough learning experience because Grey Bloom is a sick record, but yeah, we were like, okay, we can't let this new material become just kind of screwed by the touring cycles of everything. So yeah, that was definitely on our mind.
So something that's interesting to me about It Comes in Waves is, given that it really kind of needs to me, be represented in a singular listen, what kind of a challenge does that present when trying to put together a set list, presumably for some of these upcoming tours, where how do you incorporate this in? Do you just do a song, or are you, and again, I feel kind of like a dick because as I'm saying this and asking this, I'm like, oh, I'm probably maybe ruining something else further down the road too. But it's one of those to me where I feel like it would be a disservice not to just basically play this in its entirety, because I don't know how you pick one song. It's not like Whoa, Shut It Down or something like from any of the other records where it's like, okay, here's kind of the hit. We play this, you kind of make the set list based on these kind of things. I don't know how you would pick a song from this and then just throw it somewhere into the set and be like, okay, that works, and now we don't play anything else off of it. So to me, it just kind of almost seems like either you don't play any of this live until you can play it all in its entirety, or I don't know. I just kind of, I feel like that's a fun challenge of being like, how do we do this now, knowing that there's also another full length on the way where you could probably pick and choose those into a set and do the traditional, here's the 2 or 3 new ones from the record in addition to most of the things that you're used to hearing us play.
Yeah, the simplest answer is I have no fucking clue at the moment. I think originally we didn't even trying to think of even how to answer it without it coming off shitty, but I don't think any of us originally had even planned on it being stuff that we play live, because it's so off the wall for us that like I don't see a lot of our fans wanting to, like, even the fans that like it a lot. I feel like you come to an Acacia Strain show for energy, and I don't. Obviously, this record is more feel than energy, you know. But then now seeing how good of a response it is, I'm like, fuck, I would love to play like pieces of it somehow, like, because there's still fast moments. Like there's like 2 sections that are just death metal songs, you know. Like it's got me. The positive response has me thinking more about how can we incorporate it, and we use a couple different tunings on it, so it's like we'd have to plan it out to be either transposed mid section, like with our Kempers, to change tunings like on the fly, or we'd have to figure out like, okay, we're going to play these songs along with the 7-string stuff, or these chunks with the 8-string stuff. Yeah, I don't know, because there's so much about it that was more just like an art project than necessarily like something that we would play live, because there's so many layers and stuff too that it's, before we can do that, we've got to figure out how to do it right, because I think it's such a special piece of music, and seemingly I haven't seen many negative things on it at all, which I was surprised about, like I said, but seeing how much people are receiving it well, I think for us and for people listening to it, we need to take time to figure out how to do it the right way, to not cheat ourselves or people who are at our shows out of the right experience for it, you know?
I think the interesting thing that I've seen is, you know, the pseudo negative comments have really only been like, I never really liked this band, but I checked this out and this was cool. Definitely wasn't expecting this, or something, a variation of that, where it's like, okay, so right out the gate, the person's admitting like, oh, I don't like this band anyway. So it's like, all right, well, then at least like, this wasn't necessarily for you. But I mean, it's like the fact that they're like, it's cool that they're trying something different. Kind of dug this one track. You know, I didn't see the outwardly negative, like same old boring Acacia Strain or anything like that. It's like you said, it's been really positive, and kind of like one of those where, in light of the conversation we had previously, where I know you were really nervous about everything as a whole, that I was just like, it's got to feel really good. But now I'm just kind of like, well, that sucks for you, because now you got like You got the thing that you thought people were going to kind of be like, oh, I don't know about that. So now where you're like, I like that. And then it's like, if they like the other thing, you're like, now you got a real motherfucker of a problem because you have an EP people really like and want to hear. Then you have a new record that people want to hear and like. And potentially, you know, the people that are like, Wormwood, 10-year, I need that too. So now you're faced with like this triple-headed monster that I'm like, so you guys are busy for the next like 3 to 4 years of figuring all of that out.
Yeah. Yeah, you really put into light how how difficult that's going to be just now. I didn't even. Yeah, like you're fully correct. It's already pretty difficult to make our set list just because of how many records we have. But yeah, this year is going to be tough for picking out a set list.
I mean, at this point, I think you just need to do a machine head and do an evening with.
Well, dude, I would fucking love that. I know everybody else in the band would fucking hate that, but I would love to just play a 3-hour set. That's why I played guitar with Left Behind on that tour, because I wanted to play more guitar. So I would kill to do an evening with the Acacia Strain.
That would be wild. I think that would be one of the few ways to pull everything off that we've kind of talked about, where it's like, okay, maybe the first set is it comes in waves, I don't know, because I feel like I see more theatrical like production into it, like with different lighting, maybe a backdrop with LED walls or something that kind of creates a vibe. And then I couldn't help but laugh thinking in my head of when you were like, oh, I don't know how we do some of this because the different tunings. And I'm like, you have your tech come out with like the guitar on the stand, and then you just quickly kind of do whatever on that. But you know, I think it'd be kind of fun to see like, it comes in waves, then you do like maybe a more standard set, or maybe Wormwood in the middle, and then, you know, a more traditional set of the rest of the stuff. But I think like that to me would be one of the few ways you could actually pull off doing this. And I think, you know, in light of, like you said, like it comes in waves, has its own vibe. And I think that would be one thing. And then maybe you get like one other band to kind of go in the middle of everything, so at least you get a little bit of a breather. I don't know, but like I just, as I kind of been thinking about it, it's like I feel like that's one of the few ways you could really pull off doing and giving everything its fair shake in light of the conundrum you put yourself in.
Yeah, I would love to pitch your idea to my guys, but I know the answer would be no, because I don't think I mean, ultimately after 2 days I would be overplaying a 3-hour set. But yeah, I would love to be doing that. that's my my holy grail Acacia Strain set, is playing a 3-hour set that way.
I don't really have a whole lot left to kind of talk about, because I know, like I said, the next record hasn't really been announced or talked about, so I don't really want to do like what we did with the EP.
Yeah, where I start blabbing about things I'm not supposed to.
And then I have to sit on an episode for like 2 months. Yeah, that was fun.
Yes, I apologize for that.
No, I mean, it happens all the time. I'm just glad I didn't basically put it out and then and then I ruined the surprise. Like I tweeted to Vincent when he was like, the internet sucks, like when the leak happened, at least of the information, and I was like, hey, at least it wasn't me. I've been sitting on my shit for like 2 months. Like, so at least, you know, I can keep it secret.
Once that happened, I was like, oh, thank fucking God we sat on that episode. I was like, because then I would have been the one who ruined all of it, and I don't want that.
You know, I feel like this is the projects and everything that you kind of have talked about, and some of the vagueness and so forth is going to keep you guys very busy. Do you feel, you know, for a band that's been around for 20 years now as a band, but basically, you
Close
know,
to.
Yeah, a band that's been around for like 2 decades and so forth, and kind of coming into it, is it kind of overwhelming knowing that it feels like now is when the band's kind of hitting its peak and in a nice stride?
Yeah, it's interesting. Obviously, I haven't been there the whole time, because I think I was 9 years old when the band formed, if not younger. Yeah, so obviously I wasn't there the whole time, but I feel like there's something special about the 5 of us. Like, and it sounds corny, but I feel like I've listened to this band for so long. I've seen so many different lineups. I feel like, granted, I'm up on stage and not seeing it, but I feel like the 5 of us have hit what the Acacia Strain is supposed to be. And I see a lot of people saying that as well. Like, I get messages all the time like, man, I know you're newer, but I just want to let you know, like, I've been seeing this band for X amount of years, and the five of you, like, you guys have completed each other in some way. And I think it's really special that we're able to do that and that people feel that way. And I'm super grateful for that. But yeah, it's an interesting thing to be almost at a new high point with a band that's been around for that long. I feel like that's more of a question for Vincent, just because he's rode out all of the ups and downs. But just from my perspective, yeah, it's fucking awesome. Like, Dan DePondy, one of the former guitar players of Acacia Strain, who is pretty much responsible for the Deadwalk, he shared something big, like shared a big post about how different the band is now, but how seemingly we have captured like what the band should be. And for somebody who was in the band and was in a very important part of the band, for him to say that too, I was like, wow, that's fucking sick. Like, it's not just me who feels like the five of us have something special with us. You know, it's a cool feeling to be able to still surprise people with a band that's been around this long. And I think it takes the five of us together to be able to make something as unique as It Comes in Waves. If that answers that in any way, I think it's important. I think the record had to take all five of us, whether it was like, whether whoever wrote the amount of riffs or whoever wrote the amount of lyrics or leads or whatever. I don't think the percentage of what people did was as important as all of us having the right mindset and coming together to make the record together.
No, I definitely agree with that. And I think as someone who's been around almost since the beginning, I think I came in right at the tail end of 3750, just because Acacia Strain used to come around here so often that it's one of those things where it's always been consistent and steady. But I feel like lately it's like, you know, for me, yeah, there are certain records which more resonate with me, like 3750. I don't know if the band would have stayed around as long as it has if they continued kind of on that path, because there were other bands kind of doing some of that more, I don't want to call it more generic metalcore, but I mean that kind of like, oh, here's kind of like a more melodic song that has like, you know, like that weird AM radio kind of vocals over it or whatever. You know, the Deadwalk kind of was a stark contrast at times from what 3750 was. And, you know, I think that's where a lot of people came on the Acacia Strain bandwagon. And, you know, I think there have been certain records, like some people it's Continent, some people it's Wormwood, some people, you know, have only come on recently, so it might be Grey Bloom for them. But I think that, you know, that's been the interesting thing, is I think some people stayed on for everything, and there are, you know, tinges to the past on everything where it's like, that's undeniably the Acacia Strain, but there's always been a little bit of growth. And I think, you know, between, you know, like you were saying with Dan, I think everyone who's kind of come in, like, you know, a lot of people who are big fans of DL, I think DL kind of put his stamp on his time in the band. And that's, you know, I understand why people like him and like the stuff that he was doing, but I think that's kind of an interesting thing at times when bands kind of go through. I guess a really great example is like Every Time I Die. That is one of my favorite bands of all time ever. And I think the fact that they, you know, have had numerous bass players come in and out of that band of varying degrees of, you know, what they're able to do. You know, I mean, you had Josh from Shiner in the band, you know, and he added a different element to the band. And then you have different drummers. And I think, you know, like when you had Ratboy for a while, like admittedly, like, you know, the band was kind of like, he just kind of wasn't really growing with us. Then you get Legs, who just shoots that band in the fucking ass and gives them a new shot of adrenaline and a new life, to then having you know, Daniel on the band, or in the band for one record, but holy fuck, Low Teens is a stupidly great record. And now I'm excited to see what Goose does and stuff like that. And it's just one of those things where I feel like sometimes bringing new blood into the band is what keeps the band being able to survive and change and grow for 20 some odd years. There aren't very many bands that can be around that long and not have some kind of a member change, and I think that's what makes it stay viable to me.
Yeah, I don't think lineup changes are necessarily always a negative thing. Like, I feel like they get a bad rap as if it's like oh, no one could stay in that band, but I think lineup changes are cool for progression, because you get somebody who hopefully understands the previous work and understands what that was meant to accomplish, and then like you take that and then put a new spin on it. So yeah, I back I understand what you're saying, and I think lineup changes get a negative connotation just because it's not the same faces. But as far as like writing and progression, I mean, granted, I'm probably a bit biased because I'm a part of a lineup change. But I do think that they can be helpful for just like adding new elements to it. Like if it's like the same couple guys for that long, things might get stale. They might not. I don't know. You never know that. But I think lineup changes can be a positive thing that shouldn't necessarily always be looked at as like oh, what the fuck? Like, can't keep members, you know?
Yeah. Well, gonna kind of wrap this up since I know you have time to spend with your fiance and so forth. So the Acacia Strain's going out starting February 28th, New Haven, Connecticut, with Rotting Out, Creeping Death for some of the tour, Chamber, and Fuming Mouth. What can we expect from this tour?
I think a lot of ass beating. I don't know. That's a real heavy tour. I hope everyone could expect to just have a lot of fun because all those bands are fucking sick. Yeah, I don't know if I have no clue what we're gonna do about a set list for that tour. So I got no real answers for that, but you could expect a good show.
I'm excited to see you guys. You're not coming to here in Grand Rapids, so I got to make a little bit of a trek, but looking forward to the show. And maybe for once, I'll actually be able to crowd surf, because usually by the time there's like a decent song, a pit just breaks out, and then by the time I'm able to get to a spot where I can, I'm like 2 people away from the barricade, and I'm like, that's not worth it.
Well, I think the goal for this tour is to not have a single goddamn barricade, because this kind of tour, it would just kill the vibe of the tour. Like, this is obviously more of a hardcore tour. We want hardcore kids to be stage diving and crowd surfing, so hopefully there's no fucking barricades on this tour. So you'll have more safety, because barricades just fucking make everything worse anyway.
Yeah, I got dropped during a Neateds show many, many years ago. I got dropped right on my ribs, and I don't think I broke them, but I definitely had a hard time breathing for a little bit after, like for about 2 weeks after that.
Yeah, I think Vincent, like, he might have fractured one of his toes or one of his foot or something, because he was trying to get down on the crowd and move over, and he got caught up, and like someone got dropped on top of his foot or something. Yeah, barricades just fucking suck. Like, everything about them makes things worse. So hopefully no fucking barricades on that tour.
Well, thanks again for taking the time. You'll have basically a whole week to yourself at this point with both of these chats we've done. But I want to take the time and say thank you for taking the time initially and entrusting me in the secret that wasn't even released at the time.
Yeah, thank you for keeping it a secret.
Yeah, and for coming back on to kind of talk more in depth about this thing that obviously was so passionate, or that you guys were so passionate about doing, and I think is resonating with so many of us longtime Acacia Strain fans. Yeah,
thank you. I appreciate you letting me explain it again and explain the feelings behind it now that I can talk about it. So yeah, thank you also.
So that was my second chat with Tom Smith of the Acacia Strain. Huge thanks to him again for your taking a Saturday morning to do that. We didn't have breakfast or cartoons on, but just some two dudes sitting in their respective homes and enjoying each other's company, talking about what a colossal fuck up they did by releasing 2 albums in 1 year while they also have to support a 10-year anniversary of another record.
I know quite a bit about overbooking, and I can tell you that it's not easy for anyone. Your friends and family abandon you. Everybody thinks that you hate them. You might hate them. I don't know what your personal circumstances are, but yeah, it's they got a lot on their plate right now, and I think it's great. I think they could not be any more active, and I think that I think that they definitely. I said this in the last one, but I almost feel like they're relaunching their career in a way.
Yeah,
they're just coming out swinging when all they had to do was release stuff, you know, like in the normal timeline.
I think, you know, there's a few things to what you're saying that we touched on that I think kind of needs to be expressed a little bit more. And Dan, I think, is a great person to talk to this about with him being on discography discussion. You know, we talked there at the end about how lineup changes actually probably aren't a bad thing for a band that's been around as long as the Acacia Strain. And I think, you know, it comes in waves, and Tom being in the band and some of the guys that have been in the band for a while now, I think is a great example of what having someone new in the band can do for a band that's been around that long.
Yeah, I mean, having fresh blood in the mix typically will make your beer taste horrible. But I think having young blood in the band can, especially with a band like the Acacia Strain, who kind of came out of the gate swinging originally. There aren't a lot of bands that maintain that level of intensity forever. You know, eventually it's going to wean off, and that's I think more due to just general exhaustion. And I think that's what we're seeing with Acacia Strain, is that like they don't really have to deal with that because they're constantly being refreshed with new guys.
I think the thing that was interesting is, you know, he talked about how Great Bloom got sat on for like a year. Then when they finally put it out, we're touring in support of it. Now it's like, oh, let's do this Continent 10 year. And it just, like, as he said, it ruined Great Bloom as far as a tour cycle. Like, basically, the whole point of touring behind a record is to help push and promote the new record. And if all you're doing is playing a record 10 years old, that negates the whole thing. Like, we talked about that in the chat with Vincent and Tom from, you know, earlier last year. And is one of those things where I think it's really awesome to hear that was an experience that taught them how to approach potentially doing something this year where they're balancing 2 releases and a 10-year anniversary and trying to appease fans for all of those in a live setting.
Yeah. Which is like a really, really tall order.
But yeah, so I'm very excited to see basically what that experience taught the band and how they're maybe going to approach doing this tour in support of a record that's 10 years old, as well as supporting, you know, a newer record. It's a tall order. I mean, I made the joke that maybe they need to start being like Machine Head and doing an evening with. Actually, I think, you know, Acacia Strain could do that. I don't know if this isn't a slight on Acacia Strain. I just don't know. Same with Machine Head. I don't know if I could sit there for 3 fucking hours watching one band play, though.
Depends on the band.
I don't even know if I could do it for Every Time I Die, and that is like my favorite band.
Yeah, clearly, as everybody's going to find out here in a couple of days.
You know.
Or no, they probably will have already found out by the time this comes out. So there you go. You know, certain bands I could do it, like Tool, like a band that I wouldn't have to like get up and like mosh for.
Yeah, I think that's the thing.
Or like Opeth or something like that.
That has more, I don't want to say diversity, but has more, not as much crowd participation. Probably would make it a little bit easier.
Yeah, but then again, how do you also not fall asleep? I think that's the biggest issue, is that like how do you not fall asleep after 2.5 hours? I don't care how good the band is, if it's making you feel that good, and you know you're just going to keep buying drinks the whole time you're there.
Oh, I mean,
yeah. So I mean, 3 hours that would be kind of rough, but you know, it might work for somebody.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to this upcoming Acacia Strain tour. They are going out with Rotting Out. Creeping Death is on some of the dates. Looks like they're on for about 2 weeks or so. Then you have Chamber and Fuming Mouth, which if you follow Vincent on Twitter, I think he posted it on Instagram as well. Most of this bill put out his favorite albums of the year, so I think that goes to show that the Acacia Strain loves taking out bands that they love and are passionate about and fans of themselves, which is always great because there's a sense of camaraderie on a tour that, you know, sometimes you don't always see. And very much looking forward to catching it. Tour starts February 28th in New Haven, Connecticut. Wraps up on April 5th in Philadelphia. If it's coming around you, go check it out. I'm looking forward to going to Detroit and hanging out with Tom and the guys and seeing this whole bill. I may not have any limbs left to drive because, like he said, this is an ass beater. So, great fucking tour. 2020, by all accounts, looks like it's going to be a year full of great tours. The lineups I think they're getting smarter now. They're announcing like festival lineups like a year in advance so you can actually, they're not pulling this shit where it's like, okay, we're 2 weeks away from the thing and we still have a mystery headliner. It's like, no, fuck that, give it all to me now so I can give you all my fucking money and make plans like an adult to go see these things. Furnace Fest.
I've got to Furnace Fest. I've got to go.
You got to. How far away is it? I don't even know where it is.
It is a 7-hour drive from St. Louis to Birmingham, Alabama.
Oh yeah, it's in Alabama. Ugh.
Well, you could say all you want, but all the greatest bands like ever that I care about are going to be there. So,
Nah, man, they ain't got no Stained or Nickelback on that shit.
Yeah, no, they've got like actually good bands. They've got bands like Converge and Norma Jean and Code 7 and Beloved and Shy Halud and
Misery
Hopes
Signals.
Fall and Misery Signals. Yes, Boy Sets Fire. I mean, they're
68.
Furnace. Yeah, 68. Yeah, okay. That's
Chariot
fine.
might be reuniting.
No, I'm gonna. That's gonna be a no from me. Josh Skogan was very
pissed.
very upset that his phone basically exploded for no reason.
Well, I mean, flip phones vibrating all the time are rather annoying.
Yeah,
You got to
that's
open them
true.
up to see the texts, and you're just like, God damn it.
If I had to guess, I always figured Josh Skogan's phone was like
A sidekick still?
was like a rotary dial, like 1920s sort of deal.
Nah, fuck that. He's got tin can on strings.
He probably does. He's like, I heard something about a chariot reunion or something about chariots in a unit. I don't know.
Yeah, Furnace Fest is all the talk of the town if you're into hardcore or a fan of that genre from the late 90s, early 2000s. I think the only thing that would make it just make every dude come in their pants like instantly with no touching would be like if, Poison the Well did an Opposite of December show on that.
Yeah.
Dan is speechless. That was the sound of Dan coming.
I don't know. Okay. I got to get to Furnace Fest, guys. Whatever you got to do to help me make that happen. If you got to buy all the pens, buy all the pens.
You know what? Let's do that. Let's get into our plugs and wrap this episode up. If you would like to follow Acacia Strain, again, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, at the Acacia Strain, all one word. Go pick up their new record. It comes in waves. It's out now via closed casket activities. The vinyl pre-orders are still up. I don't know what they have left in stock. They might even do a second pressing. I don't know. Worst case, go buy it on iTunes. It's worth actually owning in some capacity. The newest record, the full length, we don't know what it's called yet. It's coming. So more Acacia Strain, more Acacia Strain, more Acacia Strain. If you're interested in following Tom, you can find him on Instagram at tsmith678, Twitter at tsmith_WAV. If you would like to keep up with Metal Nexus, you can find him at metalnexus.net, Facebook at Metal Nexus, Instagram at metal.nexus, Twitter at metal_nexus. And if you would like to keep up with Dan, you can find him at
DiscussMetal.com, DiscussMetalDan@gmail.com, Twitter at DiscussMetalDan. That's pretty much where I live.
And if you would like to keep up with all things this podcast, we live on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, over at BrewSpeakPod. Simple enough. Go over to YouTube. We have all of our stuff over there. We've been getting a lot of new followers, a lot of comments on stuff. Greatly appreciated. We want to kick 2020 off really great. We want to start this year strong. So that's why, we're doing a two-parter, our first two-parter ever. Looking to have some really big guests, a lot of fun chats already done on deck for you all to listen to. I've been getting some emails. If you'd like to email us, brewspeakpod@gmail.com. Go ahead and do that. Reach out to us. We do read them. May take a little bit to get back to you just because we're busy. If you would like to keep up with our show sponsors, head over to thebeanbastard.com. Get you some delicious coffee. As always, buy the Shitter's Blend until it is gone. I promise you will like it. You can find them on Facebook at The Bean Bastard, same as on Instagram. For the On Point Pomade, head over to onpointpomade.com. Use our code BSP15 and get 15% off your total order. Keep your hair, keep your beard looking oh so great and on point. Again, I always say, just start following Matty Mullins on Instagram and look at his hair. He uses his own shit. Look at how good his hair looks. Yours could equally look that good. I'm not obligated to say that. Maybe that's not true. You know what? Fuck it. That's true. If you use On Point Pomade, your hair will look as good as Matty Mullins. I'm going on record as saying that. Pins. I'll say this. If you want to help Dan go to Furnace Fest, we're not going to do a Kickstarter. We're not going to do a GoFundMe. just buy these pins from us.
Pins, baby. Pins.
$15 will get you a pin with shipping and handling included in the U.S. If you live outside the U.S., we'll figure something out. We need to get Dan to Furnace Fest, one way or another. We're working on it on our end, but like, hey, a good backup plan's always in order. So if we sell enough of these pins, maybe we can get Dan some a weekend pass to Furnace Fest.
Sounds good to me.
There you go. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John.
I am Dan.
And we will talk to you all next week.
And I am Frankfurter.